Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. A few days ago in my previous video I spoke about Zone 2, why it's useful, what it does, that sort of thing. I thought it would be good to kind of progress that and go into something else that's become popular over recent years, and that's 80-20 training, the principle that you spend 80% of your time down at one end, Zone 2, and 20% of the time of your training time riding harder and doing other stuff. And I guess the goal is to kind of explain why it's not really feasible for most of us. So let's get into 80-20. So this whole notion came about because researchers were looking at, I think it was speed skaters originally, but they were looking at what the top sports people in the world did in certain sports, what their training consisted of. And they noticed that most of the time they were doing stuff that's fairly easy. And then a little bit of their time was spent doing hard work, speed work, sprinting, whatever it might be, explosive work. And they broadened it and looked at other sports and found that there's a similar trend occurring across, lots and lots and lots of endurance sports. And it became a bit of a hot topic. I mean, it was thrown out in lectures when I was doing my degree a few years ago. Actually, it's more than a few years ago now, but feels like a few years ago. When we were doing applied physiology, they were talking about it as, the best way to train because the pros do it. But I think it misses a really down-to-earth practical point. And it's a big point because it's a reason that most of us won't be able to do it. So if we think about 80-20, Zone 2 is a zone that is quite sort of easy. It's pretty much entirely aerobic, fat burning, and you do it for your long rides. Now, let's use poster boy Pogačar as an example of Zone 2, because that bloke weighs 65 kilos and he's got 340 big fat watts to play with in his Zone 2. So let's just start out from that point and think what's involved in training in Zone 2. As I say, 65 kilos and he's going up to 340 watts. It's pretty hard not to ride at Zone 2. All right, he can go up out Duez chatting at 340 watts, which is, I mean, it's mind-blowing. But, at the top of his Zone 2, he could go up out Duez probably in 40, 45 minutes or something ridiculous. And he'd still be in his Zone 2 and he'd be getting an effective training session out of it. Likewise, he could just chug along on a flat road or a rolling road. Again, he's got loads of space inside his Zone 2 to go up to 340, and he can probably go up and down 50 watts or something and still be at the upper end of his Zone 2. Let's take a normal person, you, me, non-pros, and let's take someone with a Zone 2 that goes up to, say, 200 watts. Okay, that would probably involve someone with an FTP mid to high 200s as a rough guide, but 200 watts as a top of Zone 2. The reason for that is I like round numbers. If you've got 200 watts, you're likely to drop into active recovery, i.e., not doing much, probably at about 150, 140. Again, let's call it 150 because I like round numbers. That gives you a 50 watt Zone 2. Okay, again, going back to Pogačar, that bastard's probably got a Zone 2 that's 100 and 120 watts wide, so he's got much more scope to sit within it. If we want to sit at the top of our Zone 2, or the top half, we've only got about 25 watts to play with, 175 to 200. Now, how many times have you tried to go out and ride between, say, 175 and 200, or within any range that's like 20 watts? You can do it, but it wants to be a pretty flat road without much in the way of wind, or you've literally got to be looking down at the computer all the time and checking your power, right? And it becomes robotic. It's easy enough to do on an indoor trainer, but it's bloody hard to do outside. And the moment you go up any sort of hill, unless you want to be in your bottom gear pedaling at about 30 RPM, you're going to go above 200 watts. So hopefully you can see that from a really practical standpoint, it's hard to say I'm going to spend 80% of my time in Zone 2 because that's the best way to train. Right? Unless you want to do all your training on an indoor trainer, you're probably not going to do that. And that brings me on to the next point. Even if you could do it and you were sort of happy to spend most of your time on an indoor trainer, let's take 80-20 again. If you've got 8 hours a week to train, maybe you do 5 hours over the weekend, a couple of hours Saturday, 3 hours Sunday, 1, 4, whatever. Which leaves you 3 midweek sessions on your turbo. Okay, now 80% of that lot doesn't leave you a huge amount of time. It probably leaves you 1.5, maybe 2 turbo sessions midweek to do stuff that's not zone 2. Which means a typical week would look like Tuesday night, you could do some badass hit session or something where you go batshit and you hit high numbers. Wednesday, you're back to 175 to 200 watts. Thursday, you can go a bit batshit again, but you've got to spend some of that time at 175 to 200. Friday, day off. Saturday, 2 hours. Where am I riding? 175 to 200. Why? Because I've got to do 80-20. Okay. Sunday, 3 hours. Got to be out on a flat road, 175 to 200, or on the turbo. If you want to do a hilly ride, you've lost it. Tough shit. You're not going to spend 80% of that week in zone 2, because on a hilly ride you might only spend 15-20% of your time in that zone. So it's all well and good saying zone 2 is the way to go and 80-20 is the best way to train. It is for a pro, because it's a piece of piss to sit in zone 2 when it goes up to 340 watts. Or, I know everybody's not Pogacar, but all of these pros are aerobic machines. They all spend most of their time riding easy because they have to. They have to embed this aerobic system that is so good, so efficient and so resilient that they can do crazy hard efforts after 4, 5, 6 hours in a race, or after 18, 19, 20 days in a stage race or whatever. So their zone 2 has to be colossal. And as a percentage of their overall power profile, it's much bigger than ours. Ours might be, say, I don't know, half of our overall power profile. A pro might be 70-80% of their overall power profile is zone 2, because most of it has to be. Okay, we look at the sprinters doing the sexy stuff at the end of a race or a stage, but what we don't realise is they've got to get there first, and if they haven't got the legs to get there, it's tough. So they all need to be crazy efficient. So yeah, really relatively easy for a pro to sit in zone 2 a lot of the time. Really hard for us normal people who, want to enjoy cycling as well. Remember, it's not a job, and we want to go out on group rides and chain gangs or something, So yeah, that hopefully illustrates the point as to why, in theory, while it's really, really good, it's not going to work in real life. I don't think it is anyway. Yeah, hope that was useful. Let me know what you think with any comments. And now then, I said I'd come up with a summary for all of the videos that I shoot. So if we're going to summarize this, I'd say stop trying to train as if you're a pro and train as if you are you. There we go. Thanks very much. See you next time.